Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Stryftek and I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. Is it worth your time? On trial today, Eternal Strands. Releasing tomorrow, January 28th on Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation. This is a third-person action-adventure game with a very cool combat system. Basically, the weather affects your magic and the world is your weapon. This is the first game made by Yellow Brick Games. They're an indie studio of just over 60 people, many of which have AAA experience from other big companies. In their own words, they claim, Eternal Strands is a game we built to value the player's time and wallet. You'll find no microtransactions or season passes here. Instead, you'll find a complete single-player game built by a small yet mighty team, filled to the brim with love and passion for what we do. I do find it sad that no microtransactions is a selling point in the games industry these days, but that's a whole nother video. Yellow Brick Games feels like they have a game that values your time and wallet. Well, I just think that begs the question, is it worth your time?
The Enclave was once the heart of magical development and trade for practitioners of magic all across the Maida Basin. Not all weavers claimed it as their home, but those that did built a legacy of progress, constructs, and innovation, the likes of which have not been seen since the Surge, almost half a century ago, when a cascade of arcane disasters racked the Maida, and without warning, the Enclave sealed itself away behind a magical wall known as the Veil. Rich and powerful leaders were wounded and killed. Decades of war broke out. Every nation suffered an economic collapse. The world is calmer now, but magic has been shunned, taking the blame for decades of unrest. Weavers remain pariahs to this day. Most places tolerate us if we don't stay too long. While some weavers remember what it was like before the Surge, I've never known a time when weavers had a home. I chose this life years ago, but I'd be lying if I said it has lived up to all I hoped it would be. Stop! Still, my luck might be changing. A few weeks ago, I began traveling with a new weaver band. Now, they've brought me here, where it all began.
From here, you and your band accidentally stumbled into the long-sealed Enclave. Now your goal is to not only escape, but figure out what happened here, and in doing so, hopefully undemonize the use of magic. Now that's just the main story, which itself has some really good twists and turns, but you also have side stories for each of your companions as they deal with this new situation, all of which play nicely with the main story and help you bond with your new band of weavers. And now while the stories are great and delivered by some incredible voice acting, I do have one complaint. I wish the side quests offered more rewards. Often at the end of a quest, you just get jack squat. I'd have loved some raw materials or even a piece of gear or a new schematic. But that being said, often the storyline was worth the price of admission. I do wish there was just that little bit of extra motivation. Pretend Breath of the Wild, Shadow of the Colossus, and Control had a baby who really liked anime. You'd vaguely be in the ballpark of what Eternal Strands is. And I say vaguely because it's its own thing. It plays as a third-person action-adventure game with some slight RPG aspects, but then it adds in some weather effects and some physics, and it's just great. Here, let's break it down a little bit. First off, combat. You have your basic weapons, sword, shield, two-hander, and bow, and these feel pretty good. It's not the best combat I've ever played, but it's not the worst. But then you unlock various magical abilities and start to incorporate them into your fights to freeze, burn, and tether enemies, and the fun starts ramping up. Freezing one enemy, parrying another, shooting one from afar, and then pulling out your two-handed weapon to finish off the last one. It's just a lot of fun. But all of these small skirmishes are just training for the big guys, and that's where the real fun begins. These giant creatures sort of start out as bosses, but they end up being not only your best source of high-end materials, but the most fun you're going to have combat-wise. Each of them have their various weak spots that you can attack and take down, but your goal isn't simply to kill them. You want to extract their essence so you can learn their magic. And to do that, you have to solve the puzzle. What activates their essence point, and how do you extract it? I'll show you one example. This giant Ark of the Stricken Earth has a bunch of armor plates on. You could simply knock him down and take his materials, but if you want the big payoff, you're going to have to go through and break those armor plates. Once you've broken the right ones, you can climb up on them and extract the magic magical essence. And this guy is the easiest one. There are some that took me hours to figure out how to extract. And it was a ton of fun, though a little frustrating at times, but worth it. You'll find yourself often heading off on a quest, but taking a detour to go kill one of the giant monsters. Which brings me to the next thing I want to discuss: exploration. The main story quest has you going all over the place. New areas, old areas, and secret areas you have no idea how you missed the first time around. The areas are so densely packed with secrets, enemies, materials, making each time you run through them basically a new experience. But then Yellow Brick Games goes one step further and adds some crazy weather effects. That beautiful sunny landscape you saw yesterday, it's gone and everything is frozen over. This area that you've already been to now seems new and exciting because everything is covered in ice. Ice which if you stand in too long will start to damage you. So this map you thought you knew now is trying to kill you and has new ice enemies all over the place. Oh, and then you come back next time and there's a drought and everything just catches on fire. The different weather effects drastically change not only how you play but what you end up finding as you explore the areas. That is if you survive. And to help you survive, we have the crafting system. It's unique and a little confusing at first. Just make sure you read everything as they're giving you the tutorial. In a nutshell, when you create something, you can pick the wood, leather, and ores used to make it. These materials have special property and will change the way that gear functions, meaning you can build yourself a frost-resistant armor set, making life easier in a flash freeze. Then on top of that, some of the pieces of gear have special abilities, meaning there is a lot of customization you can have around your character and how you want to play them. I personally was loving the magic system, so I went with a set of armor that gave me a lot of magic regeneration, and then I pumped a ton of cold resistance into it. That fit my playstyle and I really enjoyed it. Now along with the gear upgrading, you can also upgrade your base. This gives you access to new levels of armor, new potions, gear slots, so on and so forth. The whole system is very elegantly done once you figure it out. There's even a system revolving around material gathering. Depending on how you kill an enemy will change the rewards you get. So you'll get something different if you burn them or freeze them rather than kill them with a weapon, which again changes your combat against the enemies because you might want a specific material from them. There are more systems I could touch on, but I want to leave those as a surprise. Yellow Brick Games has woven together a very satisfying gameplay experience. Eternal Strands throws a few different things at us. We have some anime cutscenes, some 3D cutscenes, 2D talking panels, and then the gameplay itself. They all look good, but I do wish they would have done either all 3D scenes or all anime. The swap back and forth between the two didn't always jive with me. But what you'll be seeing most of the time is this. Eternal Strands looks amazing, and surprisingly runs just as good. During my gameplay, I think I only experienced one stutter. That was when I lit the entire map on fire during a drought, so it was understandable. I am a little disappointed at the soundtrack. As I sit here writing this after the credits have rolled, I can't hum the tune or think of a single song. I'm not saying the soundtrack was bad, it did exactly what it needed to, but it was just missing something. It needed that one song that if you heard it again, all the memories of the game would flood back to you. A good example is like the Minecraft song, and you know exactly what one I'm talking about. It's nothing special, but the second you hear it, you're flooded with thoughts of Minecraft. Eternal Strands doesn't have that song, and it needed it. But what we did have is some of the best voice acting I've heard in a game in a long time.
Thanks, Dom. That helps me understand them better.
Ultimately, the most practical advice I can give is very simple. Don't stand in the murder cloud.
The passion behind the words and how they were delivered was always on point. They pulled you into their story. They made you invested in their characters. I mentioned that those companion side quests didn't give me a reward. The reward was hearing them talk more. The companions felt alive because of the voice actors.
I couldn't help overhear Dom mentioning the surge's impact on the politics of our lands.
You really do pay attention to what happens around here, don't you?
A survival instinct. Growing up in Judea, you realise the walls have ears. If some of those ears aren't yours, you're at a disadvantage. That was actually the problem, you see?
The problem?
And there is a surprising amount of dialogue in this game. Basically, every time you head back to camp, someone wants to strike up a conversation with you, and I sat through all of them. The voice acting was truly one of the highlights of this game. So, is it worth your time? There are so many more things I want to tell you about this game, but any more and we'd be stepping into the spoiler territory. I was able to roll credits in about 24 hours, but I did start skipping some of those companion stories at the end, not because I didn't want to do them, but to complete the game so I can give it a proper review. To go back and wrap everything up, I probably have another 5 hours or so, and then if I wanted 100% the achievements, that's probably another 10 or so. So I'd say overall you could walk away with about 35 to 40 hours of solid gameplay. And with the game's release price being $40 and also free on Xbox Game Pass, it's a steal. Yellow Brick Games have created something special, something that people are going to talk about for a while. So yes, this is worth your time. My name's been Stryftek and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, by all means, feel free to click that like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Is It Worth Your Time?